So what we want to inform you, what we want to make clear in this presentation is that you need to avoid the lack of focus, searching a job without job or an internship without any plan, relying only on job boards in internet, and sending really bad CVs and resumes. Because your main goal during the main goal of applying for in the process of applying is to get called into an interview. So let me explain these 4 points. That the lack of focus is so you need to have a goal. So you need to know what do you want to, in which sector do you want to work with, have an idea with the companies in your region. So it's like the example of going to a vacation without packing anything. So you will have big troubles. This is a really good tip for our side, is that when you're searching for jobs, you need to have a plan. And a really good plan is to make a list of the companies where you have already applied, for which position, in which department, which papers did you send, if you have an answer or not. To be organized allows you to be proactive and not always acting into an emergency. So you will know, you will have a lot of info, so you will be able to plan and think strategically. The third point is relying only on job boards. It's a very, very big mistake, because so also other people are relying only in job boards. So that means that you are competing against a lot of persons. But instead, if you use your connections in the university, you use your connections back home, you already worked, you already studied in your home country, then if you make your research and you find small companies that do what you learn in a small town, but this company was not in a job board, then you're gaining, so you are winning in this race, because you are doing something extra. And of course, the last point is obvious. So you need to send adequate CVs and job applications, because if you send something that is bad, that is not well written, that has a lot of mistakes, that has nothing to do with the company or the position, then you're wasting your time. So the first step is to take a step back. So think outside of the box and say, okay, what is happening here? If you are applying since 3 months and you are receiving only negative emails, then something is happening. So the first thing you need to do is to have a clear strategy. Where do you want to work? With whom? What are your interests and your capacities, your skills? So once you have identified those things, then you can think better in order to find a company that suits your skills, values, your interests, the place where you want to work. Maybe you want to work in Jena, you want to work in Weimar, you want to work in North Thuringia because you have family there. So the first step is to think your approach into a job searching. So the second step is know your region. So if you are working if you want to work in Thuringen, if you want to work in Jena, so which are the companies that work in Jena? So Jena is known, for example, for its optic cluster. Can you offer something to this optic cluster? Can you offer something for Erfurt microchip cluster? Do you speak a language that is relevant for the client of these companies, and so on? So once you have identified the industries, the companies, the organizations that work in the region where you want to work, then you can research them and find more information about them, because this information will be very relevant when you are applying. In the case of Thuringen, is very known. So it's known that we need skilled workers, but mostly in health and social work, manufacturing industries, trade and maintenance. A really good way to research for a region, in the case of Thuringen, is to see the clusters, to see the industry associations, for example, to research what are the hidden champions. Is a very common thing in Germany, because the companies in Germany are mostly small and middle companies. So big companies are not the most common things in Germany. It's the other way around. So the export champions in Germany are mostly middle companies that are in small towns. And in order to know them, then you have to research. Jobs and universities, well, that's something that we can skip. And once you already have found the whole information about the companies, the region, the clusters, the actors, the relevant clients, then you can start again your job search or your job hunting strategy. And one very important is, for example, job fairs, or follow the company in the social networks, so using job boards, but focus on that region, or focus on that industry, or focus on specific professions. And of course, the company website, because there's sometimes the companies only publicize their job openings in their web page. A trend that I want to show here is that the companies they open their job their free positions mostly in their job web page, and after that comes the job boards and these job platforms. But some companies they don't want to open their job offers in internet job boards, because they are overwhelmed by the applications, and sometimes they don't open them, so they're just waiting for the right application, and they're waiting only for the right person. So as I mentioned there are some web pages that are focused on clusters, regional clusters of technology in different fields. And it's also really nice to visit them to have an impression of the companies that are in your region or the region you want to work on. There are two differences between there are differences between a job board and a search engines. We have, for example, TAF has a job board that you can visit, and it's only for positions and job offers in Thuringen. It's only Thuringen companies and Thuringen job offers. But of course, you have massive job boards like the one from the Bundesagentur für Arbeit, where you can find positions from all around Germany. And then comes the search engines that are those, so they are big job boards because they take positions, they take open positions from other job boards and put it in their web page. A good example of that is Indeed. The thing is that yes, you found a great opportunity, but also 200 persons also read that great job offer. Someone told me that my microphone is not working. Is that the case? Annette, is everything?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Very clearly.
I can hear you. Okay, so maybe it's the person who. So someone wrote. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So maybe okay. Maybe one person have a problem. And okay, let's continue. So job fairs, yes, it's a big question now during Corona time. It's a big problem with the Corona time, but there are also online job fairs. For example, yesterday there was this big online fair from DAAD to research, and there was a lot of people in that job fair. It's a good way to have an impression what is happening, to know where and how and who is looking for what, and also to, for example, test your German communication skills, explore what is available out there, who is looking for new talent, who is not looking for new talent, and of course you will. So it's not magical that you go to a job fair and you find a job, but you find a connection. You find the head of the personal department, and then you can write to him an email saying thank you for our conversation in that job fair. It was very interesting. Let's keep in touch. There's a really good question here about online fairs happening. I don't know if there's a information center about job fairs, but I think Google would be a really good idea. I don't know if the universities are giving this information to the students, and it's something that we can hear. I can talk with my colleagues afterwards if we inform about next job fairs. So a very important topic here is social networks for career. There are two things. So if you start following companies, maybe the companies open positions in the social networks. That's one way. But the second, so the problem with social networks is that companies also Google their candidates. So that's why you need to have a professional social media account, in the sense that you have to be careful of what you post in your social networks. Or if you want to post your personal things, then limit who can see your posts. Because yes, your bachelor's party is not a nice thing to show in Facebook or in LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is a professional social network. So be aware of that be aware that companies also Google their future applicants or their applicants as you Google the company. So it's a two-way thing. Yes, so they are the other resource to search, job search is recruitment agencies, so headhunters, newspapers and magazines when they are specialized. For example, there are a lot of engineering or law or specialized or cluster publications, and most of them are good because you know who is working with. So with clients, with some new technology, and if you know that, then you can make a better application. So what is very important is that you need to think strategically and optimize your job hunt. And you need to think like an employer. That's a key issue because you are the one who is looking for a job. So you need to show, you need to inform the company what are you bringing to the application to the company if they are choosing you. So you need to be a good seller of your skills. You also need to have realistic goals. So in Germany, a bachelor is not anymore a big thing because it's only 3 years, and most of the people do a master's degree afterwards. So many companies offer many companies offer positions, junior positions for persons that have a master's degree. So a bachelor, for example, is not anymore a something that is enough to find a job sometimes. So be selective and concentrate in a small amount of companies and applications, because you need to really write a good application. So it's not something that you need to send 100, 200, 300 applications that have a bad quality. So it's better to have quality over quantity. And of course, the same thing I told you in the beginning, make a list, make a table of your track of applications. If you got a rejection, if you got invited, which papers did you send, with whom did you spoke, and so on, to work strategically and to know what is happening, and maybe you have to change. And if the things are not going as the way you think or you want, sorry, then you can change your strategy. Yes, finding a job is a job, but you also, when you are working, you need to make another activities. You need to have a life. And applications, it takes time, and now with Corona, it will take more time to obtain a response from companies, because a lot of companies, so many colleagues or many personnel departments are in job office and they have other things to do, and it will take more time. Don't focus on rejection. If you got invited to an interview, prepare for it, because it's a great thing. My colleague will talk about that afterwards. And have a life. So make sports, go outside with your friends, because that's also important to make good applications. You are always stressed and you have a lot of problems, then you cannot write and you cannot prepare your applications you cannot do it well. How to apply as the next topic. we are on time, only 1 minute after, so but it's okay. So what I was mentioning before is that there is something in German is the Initiativbewerbung. So it's applying for a position without a job opening. There was a case of someone looking for an internship, someone looking for a master's research, or even someone looking for a job. So you discover this great company in the middle of Thuringia that produce something with an incredible machine that you know how to use because you have experience in that machine in your home country. You see, okay, I can work there. They do an incredible thing. They export everywhere, and it will be nice for me to work with them, or it will be nice for the company if I have. So that's an example. So you write them and say, hey, I have skills that are necessary to use in your company. And so sometimes it works and it's very effective because it shows to a company that you are researching, that you are using your creativity, your research skills to find them. I think with this explanation is clear. The question, the last questions about searching for an internship without a job opening. But of course, you always have to write the application, not a general one, but specifically for this company. Yeah, so that's what we talked about before. And you have to show really your creativity, motivations, reasons, connections to a company, clients, or machines to be relevant for the company. So the second option is the most normal one, the most common one, is to open for a job open, so a free position. And in order to understand what they are looking for, you need to see the vacancy, so the job offer. So here you see, okay, the title. Sometimes they have an internal code. It will be nice to write it when you are sending an email, when you are applying, because sometimes they have a system that processes that, the place, and what you are doing. So where, with whom, what is your position, what is the title of your job, and so on. So the most important thing here is to see the requirements. Because once you check them and you see that you comply with 80% of what they are looking for, 80 or 90% what they are looking for is worth. So once you comply with it, it is worth to apply. If you don't comply with 80 or 19% of what they're looking for, then it doesn't make any sense to apply. Sometimes it says, okay, it's necessary to have something, then you have to comply with that, but it's sometimes it says it will be nice to have these skills. So those skills are optional. Then the things that you need to do, so if you are selected, the things that you will do in your daily job, your responsibilities, and how to apply. How to apply is also important because then you have the contact person and the requirements to apply. Sometimes the companies say, please send one document, a PDF, or send only a text message, or send only your applications via post, so normal post. And you have to respect that because you are the one who is applying for the job. If you don't do that, then your application will be not handled correctly, because they will say, okay, this person is not able to apply, or the system says we don't accept big files, or we only accept postal things. Then they will not take into account your application. So what we talked about before is compare and match about the 80 or 90% of the skills and studies that you need to bring to the when you apply. So the must-have are things that you really need to have in order to apply, and nice to have are those skills that are optional, but it is nice to have. Language, soft skills sometimes are nice to have, but in many cases are must-haves. And as I mentioned, if you have 80%, 90% of a match, then it's worth to apply. The most common ways for applying in Germany are changing. So before it was paper, so the people apply with a paper application through the post, but now the most normal way to apply is through email and forms. Forms are getting are very demanding now, are very hot now, because it's really easy for the companies to sort the applications. I really don't like forms because they are really unpersonal, but that's how the companies are doing that, unfortunately. But you have to play the game. There's no way around. When you are applying for paper-based applications, so you have to print them in a professional way and send a copy of your relevant certificates and other documents. And you need to be sure you need to do it with time, because sometimes posts take a little while. Here we have examples of CVs. We also have in our web page a lot of examples of CVs that you can take and use. They are for free. They are PDFs that you can use for your application. And we also give advice into writing CVs in the German format, because as my colleague will share with you afterwards, the German way to write a CV is really different. For example, the picture, something that is in many countries not legally, so it's illegally to put your picture in the CV, but in Germany it's a common thing. The application through email, some tips that we want to share with you is that please use a neutral email address. So nothing like littleflower88@gmail. Please use normal, so your first name and your last name at email server, and use it only for your professional application. Also, what is also important is if the company asks for PDF attachments, send them only PDF attachments, please. If they ask for one document, then send everything together. If they're asking for separate documents, do that, because sometimes they have limitations with their email servers. They cannot accept big documents. Also, when you are naming your application, use only your so CV from first name, last name, PDF. Because yes, the companies know that you are applying for a lot of other companies, but they don't want to receive. So Bosch, for example, don't want to receive an application from Siemens, or Siemens will not be happy if he receives something that says application for Bosch. Why? Because it doesn't look professional. And now what is gaining a lot of momentum is the application through online application. Is maybe more in the IT sector, and the people can apply from their cell phones very quickly. Sorry, I made a mistake. So the online application form is the first part here in the upper side. So it's getting momentum, yes, in the sense that the companies use this type of applications because it's very easy for them to sort the applications and the candidates. It has a negative side that you really have to concentrate in the application and you cannot save it. Sometimes you cannot save it and come back later and keep writing it. So I recommend to have a look of all the application process, copy the questions, and then have some time to think about them and answer them. Have it in a document, in a Word document, and copy them when you are applying. And the other thing that is very common, or is getting also momentum, is the app application, but mostly in services and in IT, in the IT sector, where the people can apply with your smartphone using their LinkedIn or Monst or Sync profile.
So let's continue with the application portfolio basics now. What I want to show you is what an application portfolio consists of in Germany, what is common here. And you might know the saying, first impressions count. And that is what I will focus on now, because normally the first thing a company sees of you is your application portfolio. So that is your first impression. It's not the one at the interview, it's your application before. So make sure you take the chance to clearly show what you have to offer with your application. And now I will show you what a cover letter consists of in Germany normally, and what a CV should look like to match German professional standards. So first of all, my colleague already explained to you what you send in normally as an application portfolio is a cover letter, CV, and the copies of references and certificates you have. Normally, in most cases, it's really written in the job description what you should send in. So please make sure that you have a close look on your job description to match all they want to see from you. It's really not important if you send it in digitally or by mail or via a post. It really makes sure that you have a close look on what they want to see. And as my colleague said, normally a photo is included in Germany, although there is a big discussion about sending in photos or not sending in photos. You probably came across that in talking to colleagues here from Germany. That is a big discussion, but it's still very common to send in a photo. And make sure, because it's your first impression, you make all documents should be of high quality. If you send it in digitally, please do a PDF. So if you send it via email, that it still looks like you have sent it in when the firm HR person opens the email. And if you send it in by post, make sure you take a good paper. For example, you can ask your copy shop what kind of paper they would recommend to you. That could be a good indicator for you. Because If you send in your application portfolio, of course, it's not only your first impression, it's also your first indicator of your general accuracy a firm might look on, because German firms like a lot, if you are professional, you are always accurate. That is a very common German thing. So what does a classic portfolio look like? As you can see here, it is quite a lot of paper. You have the cover letter, normally 1 page. And after the cover letter, you might have a cover page as well. It depends. It's not. It is not mandatory, but normally you can include it with your photo, your personal details, and afterwards you start with your CV. And if you haven't included your personal details or photo in your cover page, you do it in your CV. The CV normally consists of 2 pages, and then afterwards you start with your annex, your certificates, and your qualifications in reverse chronological order. So you start with your education, and then you go on with your work experience. So let's start and have a closer look on your cover letter first. It really is a bridge between your CV and the job, or the job description you have. And it allows you to highlight some aspects of what you already did. We had the question before in the chat, how do I highlight what I did in my studies if I don't have work experience? You could make the connection via sending in a good cover letter here. So make sure in your cover letter to include some more information about what you did in your studies. For example, in projects you did during your studies that are connected to the work in the firm or the work you have written down in the job description. That could be a connection point, even if you don't have any job experience. That is interesting for the firm. And of course, you can focus on aspects of your personality as well. If the job description shows off some personality aspects they want to see, then of course you can have some focus on it in your cover letter. And also the cover letter is there to explain gaps or some questions that might be open after they read your CV. So make sure if you have gaps that are more than 1 month, some say 3 months, in your CV, that you explain something in the cover letter, because if you take the perspective of the HR person that doesn't have much time to go through your application, they want to see a lot of answers there to all the questions that come across them. And of course, if they see gaps in your CV, they will have the question, what happened there? And if you answer those in the cover letter, you won't answer them in the interview afterwards. So you have some space and time in the interview to tell them more what you did, not of your gaps. And if they tell you not to send in cover letters, it's okay. Well, some firms do this to actually attract you, because some firms really have quite some offer, or have to take some efforts to find people, to find skilled personal workers. And so it could be that they say, well, we don't need a cover letter because it takes some time for you to do it. So if they tell you only to send in a CV, then do so. And make sure, of course, as my colleague explained before, that the cover letter is tailored to the job description and is tailored to the company you're applying at. So what does it look like? It looks like a letter. It's 1 page normally. You have formal details, starting with the company address, with the right contact person, normally written down in the job description. If you don't see the contact person from the job description, make sure to look on their on the company's website. They might have a career site where they actually explain for all job descriptions we have. Your contact person is Mrs. or Mr. Whatever. And make sure to have a look on the career site. And if you don't find anything, then of course, phone them. It could be their strategy to have some first contact with you via phone, that you have to ask them who's the contact person. Please don't ever do something like dear Mrs. and Mrs. That is not common and it's not professional in German. In Germany. Please don't forget the date, because if they sort all the applications, they might have a list where they answer you and they might go via the date you send it in. So it helps the HR persons to actually follow your application. And you start with the subject in bold, but please don't write subject as word. Write what is listed in the job description, for example, application for an internship as a researcher junior at the Rights Watch Foundation. And then salute with the correct name. Make sure that it is the correct name. Don't mix up Mrs., Mr. or something. And then you start with the introduction. You have a body and an ending, and you have a formal closing. So always thank them for their time they took for reading your application, and please don't forget the signature afterwards. So what is this structure about? In a cover letter, you have several questions to answer. And those questions are: what positions are you applying for? As I said before, HR persons might get a lot of applications and they have different piles with different job descriptions. So make sure that they can put you on the right pile. What are your main qualifications? Always tailored to the firm, to the job description. What are your goals? What is your professional identity? So something about your personality should always be included in a cover letter. And make sure to answer the question, how can you help the company? Especially if you say, well, the job description is 50% fitting to me, but some parts aren't fitting. Then make sure to answer the question, even if I'm not completely fitting, I can still help you because I have this and this experience, I can do that. It doesn't matter if you have the experience from your studies, your work during your studies, or your work afterwards. Make sure that you have a connection. And you can always say, well, first thing you start with the introduction, what attracted you to this vacancy? Why are you interested in working for the company? Make it about them. And what you can offer to the organization. So show that you're interesting for the firm, but don't answer every single question they might have, because you want to have some questions left for the interview, of course. But, well, give them a little sugar so that they want to have more, you can say. And remember, as my colleague said before, one size does not fit all. So if you apply to Olympus and you have, or you forgot to change the name in the cover letter, you are out, because this is unprofessional. You don't show accuracy, and you don't show the real interest. And as I said, HR persons might have short time to really sort out who is interesting for the firm and who's not. And if you don't show full interest. They won't be interested themselves. Another thing that is normally included in the cover letter is your availability. And especially for internships, make sure that you write something about how long it should take, if it's compared to what they offer you, if it's the same or if you need more or less. And if you can say something on it because they ask you, then make sure to tell them about your desired salary. How to do that, I will answer in the next section, so please wait some more minutes. And make sure with your application to do a first writing sample, so your grammar, spelling, and everything is perfect. Make a sample, look over it again, let somebody else look over it again. It's really important. And let's move on to the CV. With the CV, of course, you should have a look on what is your purpose. From your point of view, of course, you want to get the job, the interview, I'm sorry, not the job. First step, your CV, your application, you want to go to the next step, the interview, and then afterwards, you want to go to the job. So demonstrate what you have, but keep something back so they can have something to ask you in the interview. And make sure that the employer's point of view is they want to have a list of those candidates they want to see in the interview. So they don't want to have everybody who applied to them. They want to have a suitable candidate in the interview. What could it look like? For example, something like that. Or this one. Or that one. So you have a cover page here, last things shown. And the others were, of course, CVs. Please make sure to have a closer look on the firm, on what they want from you, what they tell you on the careers page. For example, what their website looks like, what fonts do they use, what colors do they use. You could have some corresponding colors in your CV or corresponding fonts. If they aren't so unusual in your CV, that could be a good thing to make closer connection to them via your formal part of the CV. And what does the CV consist of? First of all, of course, your personal information. And please make sure that, as you can see it here, all what you have to offer is visible in some seconds. It is neat, it is structured, and of course, make sure that you have on the left side a timeline or some explanation. For example, if you look on those personal skills, you explain what you are talking about, computer skills, language skills, and on the right side, you have all the detailed information. Make sure that it is well tailored, and I can really tell you there is no cheating option. Really, there isn't. So no reduced margins, no little font size. Make sure that you have the right gaps between, and always in the same size. Use your white space. For example, as you can see here, we had some big spaces and some little spaces. That is normally only if you have the little spaces between in one section and some more big spaces between sections. So as you can see here, you have the education, your master and your bachelor. You have a little space between. And if you have the big section, education and practical experience, you have a little more space between to make it so that it looks really professional and clear. Easily available for the HR person. Always bear in mind, they don't have so much time to go through. So have a closer look on the content. You have your personal information. If you already included it in the cover page, of course, you don't have to write everything again. One time is enough. Then you start with your education and training. And then you go over your work experience and afterwards your personal skills and competences and further information. And you always finish with the date and a written signature. You can fill it in if you send it in via email, for example, but make sure that it is handwritten. So on your personal information, make sure to, of course, include your name, your address, and your contact possibilities, your age, your nationality, and your current residence status if you're not German. As I said, normally it's included in the CV if you want to save some space in the CV because you have a lot to offer and you have a lot of experience you want to tell them about, then a cover page might be a good thing for you to exclude it in the CV, or for example, you can use the upper part of your page to include your information, your personal information. If you go through the sections, it's always in reverse chronological order. Please avoid any abbreviations for your employer. They don't want to be shortened. They want to see all of them because they are your first, the employer. And make sure that the things that you did are easily to understand because we have a lot of study programs now, a lot of names. Make sure that the company knows, well, okay, you're applying for an internship, you're applying for this job description, so that they can easily follow what you are wanting to tell them. And if you have this special information, it is common to have the dates on the left-hand side, month and year, from where it starts till the end, the name of the company or institution, where you did it and what you did. So your position title you had or your bachelor's title. And then you say, well, what did I do there? What is relevant for you to know? So for example, as you can see here, you have the information on what you did, where you did it, and what the interesting parts of your studies were. And the same you do with your work experience, I will show later on. Especially if you analyzed your latest work experience to really have some good points, bullet points, please make sure to tell them with whom did you work, what duties did you perform, where did your job fit into the organization, so what kind of position did you have, what goals were you trying to accomplish and how well did you do, and what timelines did you have. So if you had some projects you want to tell them about, please make sure to include some timeline. Was it 2 weeks time for the project? Was it half a year? Make sure that they know a bit more how deep you digged into some things. And make sure that you tailor it to the ones that are reading it. So again, especially as I informed you in the cover letter, tailor it to the firm, tailor it to the job description. And make sure that somebody is looking over it again. So somebody who probably hasn't anything to do with your studies and your experience, and make sure that you ask them, can you understand it? Is anything, any word not really common for you? Do I have to explain anything? In other words, it's a good thing to make sure that especially HR persons do understand what you are talking about, because normally applications are first looked over by HR persons, and afterwards they dig into deeper and go to the team you will be working at, and of course they understand more of what you're talking about than an HR person might. With skills and competences, make sure that you have some sections here. For example, language skills, tell them what is your mother tongue, tell them about 4 other languages you speak, and indicate in which fluency level you do so. With computer skills, do the same, and always make sure that the descriptions you give are relevant for them. So always make the connection to the job description or the firm. Especially with hobbies, leisures, and personal interests, if they aren't relevant for the job description or the firm's purpose, then leave them out. So make sure only relevant stuff. The conclusion, as I said, date and signature, not too long. As I said before, write as much as necessary, but leave some things out because it's the first step. You want to go to the next one, to the interview. It's not getting the job here. It's getting the interview. So what to include afterwards, say the annex, the appendix, always include your educational transcripts, your certifications that are relevant for the position. And of course, as my colleague explained before, if you have some work experience and they have some certificates given to you, then make sure to include those so that they have a reference from your former work partners, your former employers. Because as we had it before, are there recommendation letters needed? Normally not. What they refer to is those employment and internship certificates in Germany. And then please don't forget to read through it again and have somebody else proofread it. Because normally you're so stuck in your own CV and your cover letter that you probably might oversee some mistakes. So make sure that somebody else is reading it as well. If you want so, you can of course write it to us and give us this part and we do a check. And then leave it, send it out and wait for the answer. So let's continue to the last part. And of course, it's the part you want to or you worked for with all the other parts we explained before. You want to have a job interview. So what is important about the job interview? First of all, please change the perspective before you prepare for a job interview. As you did before, you said, well, job search, what is interesting for me in the application. You said, what is interesting for me, what is interesting for the company, what is my employer looking for, and you do the same while preparing for the interview, because what they ask themselves is, of course, what do we need for the job? Whom do we need? Who matches best? And how do we find out? So they will ask themselves, what do we need? What kind of qualification? What kind of experience? But also, what kind of soft skills? What kind of personality do we need? Who does fit to the team, to our firm? And they should have a look on, well, if we're searching for somebody who would be best for it and who can develop best in the job, because of course, they might get some applications where they say, well, yeah, 80% are there, but with the other 20% we need, is it suitable? Is the one suitable developing in this 20% or not? And that is what they ask in the interview, if they are good. What does an interview normally consist of? Of course, you have the small talk to start with. They tell you what the timeline will be, who is sitting in front of you, and they also tell you what they will be starting with and what they expect of you. And then they start the so-called interview phase, where they question you about your qualifications, about your CV, your motivation, and they want to find out how do you match to the job description and how do you match to the team and the company in its whole. And they normally present something about the company as well, about the task you will be fulfilling, and they normally have a part where they ask you what questions you have. So be prepared to have some questions. And afterwards, they conclude with questions about salary, about vacation, about further action, how they will handle your application after the interview. Who sits in front of you or next to you there? Normally 1 to 3 persons. But in some cases, especially if you apply at public service, it could be 1 to 8 persons, because they have somebody of HR, of the department, some of the head of the staff council, of equal opportunities officer. So it could be quite a lot of people sitting there, and it might be that only 3 of them are questioning you and the others are just looking at you. It can get a little uncomfortable, but be sure that it's a professional stadium, a professional interview to them. They've done it before, and if they are clever, they make sure that you are feeling well, because of course you're not only applying at the company, they are also applying for you, a skilled worker. Don't forget it. And with all you do in the interview, make sure to be clear, concise, and confident. It is like continuing your application. You were accurate, you were clear and confident in your application, in your cover letter. So continue to do so in the interview as well. But be sure they are people as you are, human beings. They know that you might be a little stressed by the situation. So it's perfectly all right if you have a blackout or something, to tell them, give me a minute, and then you breathe, and then you start answering. It's perfectly all right. As my colleague and I explained before, you do a background check via preparing for the interview. We already showed you some things where you can have a look on the branches where you want to apply on the company's page. You make sure that you know something about the enterprise, what products do they produce, what projects do they have, what are other employees telling you about the firm. For example, there's a page called Kununu, where employees of firms put in their experience with the firm. So have a look on those pages. Not every firm in Thuringia is listed there, because we have a lot of small and medium-sized firms, and with small firms, of course, you have not so many employees that could be willing to write something in Kununu for their firms, but make sure that you have a look on those pages, so there might be some interesting ideas for you. And also, one connection you have is the contact person you have in the job description or on the careers page. Make sure that you have a look on those people as well. Do you find any information on professional sites as Xing or LinkedIn about them? And also if they name you some more interviewers, then have a look on those as well. So this is the page I was talking about, the Kununu page. It is in German. You have another one in English that is not so commonly used in Germany, but it's gaining more information. It's Glassdoor, and in Germany it's also job voting or Mein Chef, where you can have a look on those firms. But if you type in the firm's name and experience, or Erfahrung, as it is called in German, you might receive some information via Googling. Yeah. After you've did your background check, of course, the best information you can get is, of course, looking at the job advert, the job description, and your application. So what did you already tell them? Make sure that you have, to every step and every section in your CV and your cover letter, you can tell them something if they ask you again. They might ask you something like, tell me about yourself. Then please make sure to answer this question always tailored to the firm and the job description. They want to get to know you, but they want to get to know you because they want to see if you match the job description and the firm or not. Afterwards, they can get to know you as a person as well, but this is not the content of the interview. So tailor your answers. And with the salary range, if they haven't asked you before, they might probably ask you as a question in the interview, especially as a stress question in the interview, what your salary should be like. We think that a salary range could be a good answer for you. And if you want to have a look at what could be a salary that is okay, then go on Xing, Nettolohn, or Gehaltsvergleich, as I've written down here on the presentation on the screen, to have a closer look on what your position in the region you're applying at could be worth. Because of course the salary depends on how much experience do you have, where do you apply. The region is really important in Germany. So make sure that you have an idea there. You can even type in the size of the firm and your qualification level. So it's a good thing to have a look on this. And of course, you had your first impression with your application, but now you have your first real face-to-face impression normally. So make sure that you have a good styling and voice. What does that mean? It should be tailored to the firm as well. So we always advise skirt or suit. Normally okay, but for some firms, especially if you look in the creativity part or on a very modern firm, they might be glad to see you in your real clothes, in your comfortable clothes, but make sure that they can see that you have an interest, that you show respect, and that you know that this interview is a professional situation. So always do or create your clothes like you're comfortable and professional, something between this. And what I mean with voice is actually, especially if you talk with them now via virtual recruiting methods or only on the telephone, make sure that you stand upright, because you have more voice and a deeper voice if you stand upright. We do so as well, my colleague and I now, because if you sit, your stomach gets shortened and you don't have so much volume in your voice, and it gets higher and it pitches So especially for females, it's important to have some bit lower voice, because lower voices normally say that you are more confident. It's some psychological part behind this, so make sure that you use this information. And of course, the interview is more like a questioning. And they normally question you about your documents, your job experience. They want to get to know you. They want to match you to the job and the company. They want to know what was your motivation. Why did you change your current employer, for example? And they want to know what kind of work attitude and stress resistance do you have? So how do you deal with criticism? How would your ideal team look like? And of course, if you answer this, your answer will be compared to the team that is already there. Is it suitable or not? And a lot of Thuringian firms in the job fairs, and so they always tell us that they ask some questions about the future. So where do you see yourself in, say, 5 years' time? And out of the answer, of course, they can have a look on what your goals are. Do you have a strategy? Do you have an idea of what you will be like in 5 years' time? That hasn't been totally correct. It's more about having an idea. And of course, in your answers included, are you still at that firm? Are you somewhere else? That is what is interesting for the HR persons and the company. And what about stress questions, tough questions? For example, what speaks against you? Why should we hire you? Why did you change? Please take your time to answer those stress questions, because they have probably 1 hour to have a little insight of how you will deal in situations where you get stressed while working. And be patient, be professional, have some short answers, be prepared. And prepared means answer those questions before. For example, do a mock interview with your partners, somebody you dealt with who's willing to be your mock partner in an interview. If you have already answered those questions, it will be easier for you in the real situation. So practicing is a good thing to actually come over those difficulties. And some firms, they use provocations, trick questions, or for example, they ask you, it really took you quite some time to get your studies done. Why was it? You don't have to answer this little part in the question where they stress you. Answer the question professionally. Only look on what is in the question. You did your studies. It took some time. What was it worth for? Answer like that. And don't get tricked by them. And some firms like questions like, how heavy is New York, for example? Of course, you can't answer this question, but they want to see what strategy do you have answering those questions nobody can answer. So make sure that you have an idea for those trick questions that might occur. I don't like those. I don't think they are good ones, because they want to get to know you and they want to make sure that you like them as well. But some firms still do it, so be prepared to have those as well. So as I said, practice. And especially if you phone them before, have your application in clear view. Of course, you're allowed to make notes. It's good to make notes because you show respect, you show interest. And please don't get in late. If you are late because whatever happened, you couldn't foresee, phone them. So have their phone number ready to contact them if anything goes wrong via going to the interview. Have your phone turned off, so show your respect, your preparation here, as well as you did in your application, and listen actively. So if you don't understand any question, of course, you can ask them again. Is this question about that part of my CV or that part? What are you addressing at? So they can clear your question before you answer something in a total different way they wanted to know. Take your time, and please, before you go in or before you phone them, smile. Because if you smile before, your expression and your voice gets a good tone, a nice tone. It's always good to have a smile for those ones you want to attract. It's still an attraction. You advertise yourself. And be prepared to answer questions they might not tell you, or if they say, well, what questions do you have? Be prepared. For example, you can have some questions on the team. What would be their expectations to measure for your success? Their development opportunities, training concerning your idea of the future, for example, they asked before. Make sure to really think about those questions before, and please don't ask any questions they already answered in on their career site, in the job description, or at any page concerning the company. So as we said before, do a good preparation and you will find the right questions here. And last but not least, there are some questions that are inadmissible. All the questions they ask in an interview should and are compulsory only for the job and the company. Nothing that has to do with your personal life. So especially if your financial situation, pregnancy questions, marital statements or partnerships, your party affiliation or religion isn't important. There are some exceptions, but normally all the things that are personal aren't allowed to ask, but they still do, even if they're not allowed. And you can answer whatever you want if they ask you. But make sure if you answer those questions, or if you tell them without them questioning you, you can't lie. If they ask you questions they are not allowed to question, then you can lie. That is the only difference. So everything you tell them without them asking you has to be right. So that is what I can tell you about the interview. And of course, afterwards you say thank you, and you do probably a handshake, and you're probably full of joy because you've done it. Then don't forget to have some follow-up. A thank you note within 24 hours is always a good option. And of course, make some notes just afterwards within 72 hours, because in this time period, you can remember well all the things they asked you, your impression of the interview. Keep a record, because if you do more than one interview, then you can compare and you can have a decision on whom you want to work with. And of course, if they ask you something afterwards, if you have your notes, you can tell them if you already told them, and tell them again what you told them, or you have to answer something new.